Welcome back to State of Decay 2 and the Commune. We have just killed the final Plague Heart in Providence Ridge, and now it's time to move on to the next phase of this community's development. Let's talk to our leader, Boots.
We could have handled that easy.
All right, so Boots is going to talk to some community members about defeating the Plague Hearts. We wouldn't have survived the Blood Plague without you. We need to keep a supply of resources coming in, or we won't survive the next disaster. Oh, somebody's going in. Hey, I want to talk to you. Where'd you go? Hey, come here. Hey! No, not workshop. Mary. My only regret is there are no more plague zombies left to kill. There are other dangers out there. We need to trade for resources and materials.
I like that idea.
We're doing great.
All right. So we've kicked off our legacy. We're going to start getting legacy missions that we can run around on. In the meantime, though, one problem we have is we're really short on materials. And I'm going to need to figure out what to do about that. Now, we're in the middle of building our... we're in the middle of building our trade depot. And so that might give us some options. But I'm curious, actually. It's been a while since I've used the radio to find resources. So I'm gonna spend a little bit of influence and see if I can find some materials.
Good place for shopping.
Ooh, I think I need some gas. I need to get gas. Oh man, I got so many pet peeves about this menu. Okay, anyway. Oh wait, and does my character have a suppressed weapon? I do not have a suppressed weapon. That's going to be a problem. Let's make ourselves a suppressor. Boink. And let's slap that suppressor on one of these guns. This is the one that's got the most bullets on it. So let's do that one. Got a bunch of brakes. And so let's put a brake on this guy just because why not? Okay, so we'll head out on the road. And, oh hey, we got 3 options here for where we could find materials. And actually, yeah, okay. Let's poke around. Oh yeah, of course, we got a couple of sheds right there. That is a good place to find materials. So yeah, let's head over that direction. So right before the episode began, Cogs asked a question. He asked, if State of Decay 2 was remastered for the Series X, how many of the existing maps could become contiguous maps? So that's a good question for a couple of reasons. But it's one that I can't really easily answer because the question of, what kinds of resources the game can afford to expend, it's not as simple as... Oh, I didn't even realize that was a zombie. I thought that was a container. I guess zombies are containers of something. It's not usually as simple as just a numbers game. Like, oh, if you have twice the memory, you can have twice the map. It's more complicated than that, and unfortunately, I'm not a technical person, so I can't explain why it's more complicated than that. But it's also one of the things that's the thing that I thought would be interesting to mention is the fact that the size of the map is not just limited by memory. In fact, actually, you know what? Actually, that wouldn't help at all. I just realized the Series X, like getting a more powerful device with more memory wouldn't actually help because right now in my game, this entire map is not loaded. There's certain information about the map that's loaded, but the map, like right now, I'm right here. That means that there is a little half-kilometer square around me that is loaded, and there are 8 other half-kilometer squares around me that are also loaded. And then there's a background that's loaded that's very, very low poly that sort of vaguely represents the rest of the map in the distance, but the actual this area up here, like the place where you have your starter base in Providence Ridge, is not loaded right now. It's not in memory. And similarly, this bottom corner down here is not loaded right now. It is not in memory. And so what that means is we could, if we wanted to, in theory, if the only constraint we're talking about is memory, we could have made all the maps contiguous. We could have had just be this gigantic, enormous, massive map, and just keep streaming in all of that stuff from one place to another. But that's not the only factor. One of the things that led us to our current sort of map size is just like game design and game balance concerns. We wanted players to be able to move around and get a fresh start, for instance. So we got some ammo here. That was good. I like ammo. Where did I put my car? Oh, it's on the other side. But like, if we made it like one giant contiguous map, then you would exhaust that entire giant contiguous map. And then if you moved on, if you tried to like leave that map and go to a new map, you could go to the same identical map. It would be like it would be a lot like Breakdown, right? Where the State of Decay 1 had only one giant contiguous map, which was about the size of the State of Decay 2 maps. And sorry, my character's talking at the same time as me. I'm not sure if you can hear me very well. It's distracting me and making it difficult for me to talk. But basically, so I actually think from a design perspective, having the smaller maps helps because it means that when you complete a map, you get to move on to a different map, and then complete that map, then move on to a different map. And you can sort of have this story of going from place to place to place. If we only did one giant contiguous map and mushed all the maps together, then when you finished that map, you would only have the same map to move on to, and I think that just wouldn't feel as good. And so I like maps that you can finish. You can basically, exhaust them more quickly. So I didn't find materials, so I need to move on. To have maps you can exhaust more quickly and then satisfyingly move on eternally, basically, from one map to another. And, you don't have to come back to your first map until you've gone through 4 other maps. Okay, so we've got another mission right now that's happening in the same place as my materials mission. Okay, there's some materials. We succeeded in getting what we intended to get, so that's good. Let's load that up. But this other site over here was actually marked. Let's see what this guy wants. Hey, Sherry? No. I don't want to... No. I don't want to kill some random people just because you say so. That's garbage. Sherry, you're a bad person. So that's not... So, yeah. So, whoa! So I think there are design reasons why having a multiple smaller maps is better than having just one giant contiguous map. And this place has got nothing in it at all. So I won't get anything from it. Is there... So these places are not likely to actually have materials, but I am curious what's in them, so I'm going to head down that way. Because if they were likely to have materials, they would probably say so. Oh, get off! You jerk. Oh yeah, the power of Monster Energy Drink. State of Decay 2 does come off like it's sponsored by energy drinks, doesn't it? It's not, though. It's not like Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, which absolutely was sponsored by energy drinks. Oh, come on. I don't want to fight all of these things. Do I have any fire? I do. I do have fire. It's not going to help with these first two. Maybe if I can gather everybody together, I can make it work for some of them. Okay, apparently there's a screamer nearby. Come on. Okay, is that everyone? Where's this screamer? Not close enough to be a problem. Okay, cool. Whew! Anyway, let's go down and check out that self-storage site. What was I talking about a second ago? I completely forgot. Oh yeah, but I was also going to say that there are other technical constraints too. Like for instance, I think that so Unreal by default measures distances in centimeters, and there are other engines and systems you can use that use other metrics. There's some that use meters as their sort of baseline. As their baseline unit of measurement. And you'd think, well, why does that matter, whether you measure the map in centimeters and meters? Well, there's such a thing as floating point errors, where basically so I'm gonna butcher this explanation. I am not a technical person. I'm gonna get it wrong, but I think I might get fairly close for a layperson. But basically, floating points or floats are sort of a very efficient way of being able to represent a large number of different numerical values in binary. So it's sort of a way that you can sort of represent all the significant digits of a particular number using binary code. And it's really, really great up to a certain amount. But when the numbers get to a certain size, floating point becomes inaccurate. And so you start having, like for instance, if you've got a map that is, whatever, 1,000,000 centimeters wide, I don't know how big that would be. If you got a map that's 1,000,000 centimeters wide, maybe the game could handle that. But if you go up to 10 million, then you've gotten too many digits, and now it's going to be like 10 million in 1, or 10 million in 5, or 900 and or like 9,999,342. Whatever. You'll start getting numbers that are not exactly 10 million. Then you go up to 100 million, the difference gets even bigger. And if you get up to, 1 billion, the differences get even bigger. And so floats are really, really good for representing numbers under certain circumstances. But if you just take an arbitrary map and say, I'm going to make this map 10 times the size it was, you start getting into the potential for like errors like that, where you just simply can't precisely represent the locations of things anymore because everything is too big. So I just remember when we were talking about the size of the maps in State of Decay 2, that was an issue that came up, where we're like, if we push them too big, then we have to come up with another solution for floating point errors, and that becomes a thing. I don't think it's unsolvable. Obviously, people have come up with enormous maps before. There's ways you can solve it, but it would just be another problem we'd have to solve that has nothing to do with how much memory the game has, or how much disk space you want to save it on, or whatever. Oh wait, there's a person here that I want to talk to. Oh, this is a fuel merchant? Hey there, fuel merchant. Sure.
Stuff to trade.
Of course.
What you got? I don't think I need fuel in particular. You do have some fancy fire, though. Camp heater. Yeah, boosting morale? Sure. Okay. Bought some fancy stuff. So I just ran around, did a bunch of random stuff. I don't think any of this had to do with my legacy, though. So let's see here. Let's pull out the things that I can carry really efficiently. Drop off stuff that's a little bit heavier. And where should we go? The broker. Oh, all the way over there. All right, fine. Get off. Come on, do not high center yourself. Do not high center yourself. Oh my gosh, I am so ridiculous. Okay, here we go. All right, car's not in the greatest shape, but it's fine. We'll make it anyway. It'll be okay. Start heading this direction, round the mountain. We'll be coming round the mountain when we come. We'll be coming round the mountain when we come. We'll be coming round the mountain, we'll be coming round the mountain, we'll be coming round the mountain when we come. What am I doing? I'm so paranoid about, like, bloaters, I don't want to read the chat. It looks like Wildman and Airy Twitch are talking to each other, so maybe I don't need to worry about it. So yeah, so CommsBolt was making suggestions for different ways that we could approach locations in the game. That's the thing. Like, I wasn't saying that you can't solve that floating point error problem. You absolutely can. But it's a particularly, as I understand it, again, I'm not a technical person, and anyone who actually knows how this stuff works in an intimate level will listen to me talking and think I'm an idiot. So I apologize for that to anyone who's doing that. But the impression that I get is that, you know, just that there are ways that you could solve trying to have larger numbers incorporated into, you know, your coordinate system in the game and your location system in the game. But you'd have to engineer those, right? And if the designers on a team, like we did on State of Decay 2, don't want large contiguous maps, and all we want is smaller maps that you can get a sense of satisfaction for completing and then move on to another map. If that's all we're asking for, then you don't need to solve that problem of coming up with some solution for the whole floating point issue. And so, oh, I went too far. And so you don't solve it. And then later on, if the designers change their mind and they're like annoying, like designers sometimes are, and we're like, oh, never mind, we really do actually want to have enormous maps, then you're creating a problem for the programmers because they're like, okay, well, now we have to solve a bunch of problems we didn't have to solve before. And you're making everything more expensive, probably unnecessarily. And so that's what I want to avoid doing, is just making a bunch of non-essential problems. And so, yeah, so Cogs' suggestion, which, you know, I think he was just speaking in hypotheticals anyway. If we decided we wanted to suddenly try to make all these maps contiguous with each other, that would be a big change. I don't think we would want to do that, because I think that the design team generally considers the current map sizes to be fine for State of Decay 2. And because it would just bite off a whole bunch of new problems, it would be unlikely to give that a try. Okay, so this guy is interested in some... So basically what we're doing is sort of like a trade triangle mission, where we're going to a bunch of enclaves, and we're meeting with them, and we're saying, hey, you've got this, but you need this. And we're going to try to set up like a trading system between these guys. Can I hit this from here? Sort of. It's not dead yet. I like how it doesn't scream unless it knows where I am. Though, actually, do I like that? Maybe I don't like that. Maybe it should scream, actually. So he could use it as like as a distraction. I am just not going to do anything about that horde. Awesome Twitch Dude asks, how come some weapons don't make it into the game? So we have been trying, that we put some effort. In fact, I think one of the updates we did in the 20s somewhere involved us grabbing some weapons that didn't originally make it into the game and adding them into the... Dang it, don't pull me out. Okay, I managed to kill the zombie. But still got ripped out of the car. What was I answering? Oh, yeah, so... But basically, there's a few different reasons that weapons historically haven't made it into the game. There's some weapons that had weird effects that we never finished making. And so, like, for instance, we had, like, an incendiary grenade launcher, for instance, that we never finished. We never actually made it good. And so, by our standards, and so we never. So there's a version of it sitting in the game that we never released because we didn't like it enough yet. We wanted it to be better before we released it.
No place to put it.
So, There we go. And where is my... Oh, my next destination's already all the way over there. Okay, well, I think we might need to pick up gas on the way. So that's one reason. If we just don't think it's good enough yet, that's one reason to do it. Another one is if we're releasing like a big pile of weapons at once, sometimes we'll come up with a bunch of ideas and we'll make a bunch of weapons, and it's kind of too many weapons. Like if you release too many weapons at the same time, players can't even really like the difference between us releasing 22 weapons and 25 weapons just isn't significant. You're not going to appreciate those last 3 weapons because we released too many. If we release, 6 weapons, but we could release 7 weapons, well, chances are we'll probably try to release that 7th weapon because, there's only 6 other weapons competing with it. Players will be able to appreciate all the weapons, so keeping that 7th weapon will feel good. But if once you get up to a certain number, it's like more weapons isn't all that interesting anymore. And so sometimes we'll actually hold back on the number of weapons that we're trying to put into the game just because we want the players to be able to appreciate everything that we added. We want them to be able to sort of think, like, take each individual thing we added to the game and really sort of value it individually. And we'll think that that it's in the interest of the game, in the interest of player experience, to parcel them out. And so sometimes we'll just cut a couple of weapons from a pack because we're like, this is too many weapons, player's not going to appreciate it. So we'll save this weapon for later, and the player will instead of having, oh, I was going to get some gas. Instead of having, just one good experience of getting a huge pile of weapon that doesn't actually feel that different from getting just a smaller pile of weapons, they get to have 2 separate experiences of discovering a new pile of weapons by us spacing them out. And so part of it is just because we think it's more entertaining to get more smaller doses of weapons. Another case is sometimes we will we'll run out of time to test a weapon. Like the weapon, we'll believe that the weapon works well enough for our purposes. And we won't think that there's something wrong with the weapon. But weapons have to go through a QA process to make sure that they're actually working right. And if we're looking at, we've planned to release this, and move on, release some update and move on right afterwards. We got other priorities we're moving on to. And it looks like we don't have time to complete all of the work of not just completing the weapons, but also testing the weapons. Then we'll cut some weapons to save some on QA bandwidth. So QA has time to catch other bugs, which might end up being more important than making sure this certain gun, the clip doesn't animate weirdly in your hand as you're reloading, or something like all those little minor issues you need to find with weapons. If QA doesn't spend their time trying to find those, then they could find other more significant problems and get an update ready for release faster. So sometimes we'll make the decision based on that. And so as a result, we sometimes have weapons that sort of hang around in the data of the game, but they'll go a while without coming out, and we'll be aware of them just sort of sitting there in the data. And sometimes modders will find them. But there'll be some small reason, they'll be mostly functional, but there'll be some small reason or another why we didn't include them yet. But periodically we try to do a roundup of those weapons and find them and put them into the game because, basically I feel like it's actually a good policy to occasionally cut weapons from some of our bigger releases and let players, focus a little bit more, let them really enjoy the weapons. We give them a little bit more. And then over time, this is the wrong way, over time we'll build up a handful of weapons here, a handful of weapons there, and then we can do another release of weapons later on down the line that contains this sort of eclectic bag of all the weapons we haven't released yet. So I think that's actually a good experience, and so I don't mind it. I don't think that that's too much of a problem, as long as we remember to actually release the weapons eventually. And so we have. I think there was at least one update that we did sometime in the 20s that included a pile of weapons that we had just left lying around for a long time, and we cleared out a bunch of those. There might be a handful left that we haven't put in the game yet, but I don't think there's that many. I think that we actually have covered a lot of our bases there. Toxic Green is a new member of the chat. Thank you so much for coming in and saying nice things about State of Decay 2. That always makes me happy when people show up to do that sort of thing. So thank you. Yeah, so let's head up here and talk to this last enclave. Here we go. I could hear that guy coming up behind me. I just wondered how many zombies I could shoot before he got to me. Oh yeah, so Cogs has been pointing out, and I missed it, that update 27 was the one that added in a bunch of lost weapons. So I need to talk to Addie, who is... It's the Bunny Lord! Yay, a trade triangle! Mission complete. So we're actually making progress on our trader stuff. That's cool. Our car is in terrible shape. Let's go home. Oh no. Oh no. Ah! All right. Before we go home, let's go get killed. Probably. Fighting another infestation. Is this the right way to go? Yes-ish. So Toxic Green wants to know if there's going to be a State of Decay 3. So yeah, the only thing that we've said about State of Decay 3 is that we are working on a State of Decay 3. And that's all we've said. So that's all I can say, really. I mean, we're really sort of... while we're in the early stages of like still kind of figuring out what State of Decay 3 would be, we don't really want to try to give anyone details on it because there's just so many decisions left to be made, and we don't want to, like, you know, just speak out of turn, say something that it turns out not to be accurate once everything sort of works out. And yeah, we want people to be able to rely on the things that we say, and so we try to give people a really accurate assessment of our level of certainty about things like this. And right now, we're not certain enough about anything to be able to talk about it. So we don't give people any information on State of Decay 3 right now, but someday we will. I mean, it's not going to take forever. Oh, what? Ah, again, my aim snap. Okay, this time my aim snap wasn't working because my character has garbage stamina. Okay, looks like we have not quite killed the infestation. Who's left? There we go. Unfortunately, this gun shop has already been looted, but there's a spot next door that might be interesting.
This one out. Well, it's something.
We got some chemicals. That's fine. I don't mind chemicals. Is there anything around here that looks like it would have materials? Okay, this one says it looks like it had materials. I probably stole them, though. And these ones, none of them do. You know what? I guess I'm going to go over there just in case it still has materials that I missed. But I don't think that's the case. Actually, you know, I had somebody make a suggestion in a previous video. I'm sorry that I forgot who it was or what video. Somebody in one of my videos suggested that if on the map it still says site may contain materials, that means it probably has a second rucksack. Like, even if I did get a materials rucksack out of that spot and moved on, if it still says that it might have materials, then that means it still has a rucksack of materials. Let's test that theory. I'm sorry that I don't remember who it was that told me that, because I'd love to give them credit for making that suggestion. It was somebody in a YouTube comment. So, whoever you are, if you're watching now, I really appreciate you. I guess you're not watching now. Like, you're not watching as I make this. Stop it. This guy really relies on his energy drinks, doesn't he? Well, if you're going to have a slow-firing weapon, definitely have one that can shoot straight through zombies. Because then you can get 2 zombies at once, and it's like you're killing them at the normal rate. So let's see. Some bandages. Oh, no. And this. Okay, yeah. So, no. I think we've just proven that that is not the case. That just because it says something might contain materials that does not mean that it still contains materials.
Someone needs a hit.
It's entirely possible that you can remove the materials from a site like that, and it will still say may contain materials, but it won't contain materials. Oh, Cogs points out that it was actually update 26 that contained the weapons. We just forgot to mention it in the patch notes for update 26, and so we treated them like they were in update 27. And because they just went into general loot, a lot of players probably just never even saw them, never even noticed them until we pointed out that they were something for them to look for in update 27. So it is kind of fun when we discovered that we accidentally added something we didn't realize we added. Okay, so I've hit enough zombies with this car. Time to take it home. Oh, I just remembered the reason why I started making a bunch of extra parts. What is the best way to go? Nature's Highway is the best way to go. The reason I started salvaging all of my backpacks a little bit earlier on in this stream was because I was trying to make repair kits. And I could only make one repair kit because I was so low on parts. So I should make more repair kits because this car is not looking that great. I mean, visually it does look great. I love the way this car looks, but I just mean it's not looking like it's very functional. Okay, yeah. So we'll take Nature's Highway up to my base, or up close to my base anyway. Once we see a good off ramp onto regular pasture. Uh-oh. Looks like we got some problems with our trade partners, but I'm not going to deal with them this time. I feel like I've been streaming for over 2 hours now. I think I probably need a break, so let's... Where am I? Pff, going the wrong direction is where I am. I mean, I guess I could mark my base on the map. That would make it easier. So we'll head home to our base, fix our car, get everything in good working order, and then worry about the rest of these missions sometime later on. Oh, yeah, so CU30S wanted to know what the name of this truck was. And he got an answer from Wildman in the chat. But yeah, this is the Reims 5, or the Reims V. I think it's actually that V probably doesn't stand for a 5. It's probably just a V. It's the Reims V, named after, of course, Ving Rhames, who was in Dawn of the Dead, I think. And it's a Tiger Claw version, which I think I might have gotten this car as part of like a special like retailer promotion. Like I got access to a bunch of crap that most people don't get access to because I worked on the game, or that most people would need to put more effort at least into getting access to because I worked on the game. And so this Tiger Claw might actually be one of those. If I'm right, and this is one of the retailer bonuses, and it looks like Wildman might have bought his game from the place that provides the Tiger Claw. Okay. So, yeah, we've got a mission to deal with next time around. That'll be fun. And I guess this guy's in okay shape. Let's figure out... Oh, you know what? He's the one who's going to have to go on these missions, I think, right? Isn't that how that works? So, maybe we'll actually switch it up. Let's switch to Hurley. And the trader mission will expire. That's okay, because we'll give Boots a chance to relax, and then we'll let him go on the next mission. Go on that mission again next time it pops up. In the meantime, let's get this guy ready to go so that we know what we're doing next time we get started. Okay, this is a 22 rifle, so we should carry some backup 22. this. Yeah, we could back up for that. That we don't need this. That's all good. We should probably carry a little bit of fire with us for whatever we're doing. And there we go.
Oh man, it's a screamer.
So yeah, I think this has been a nice little successful run. We took advantage of a lot of the stuff that we got from Update 30, including, we explored over the course of the past few episodes. We explored our supply locker, which has got some advantages. We brought in Nando, which is our new. He looks just like Boots, but I promise he's a different guy. We brought in Nando here, who is a very leveled up character. Who gave us a lot of advantages, and he brought in some gear that we needed, so that was cool. We brought him from another community, which is something we couldn't do before. And yeah, so I am glad that Update 30 is here. My plan overall is to complete the legacy with the Commune, and then I'll have to decide if I actually want to mulch the Commune or keep them going. Maybe turn them into a lethal campaign. That might be a little bit strange. One thing I have been talking about doing is once I actually earn the legacy with these guys, I was thinking of actually switching over to Heartland first before coming back and trying to play in the lethal zone, mostly so that I can get used to get used to armored ferals without them coming in packs. Because if you switch up to the lethal zone, not only do you get armored ferals, but they come in threes, which is insane in my mind. But in Heartland, we introduce them and they don't come in threes. They come in solos. So that might actually be a good, nice skill level up for me to go from Nightmare Zone regular game into Heartland and then into the lethal zone. So we're getting weirdly close to grabbing that last Nightmare legacy. So I don't know how much further away we are from that, but hope I get there fairly soon. I've been delaying intentionally with some of this stuff just so that I could do it after Update 30. But now that we've got Update 30, yeah, we're on the fast track. So Cogs has a question. He asks, did you design the leader types and missions? Were there plans for other leader types? I've seen speculations about a doctor or scientist leader. Yeah, so the original plan that we had was actually to have a huge variety of different leader types and actually to have multiple leaders per community. We were not going to originally have a single leader for a community. We were going to have several leaders, and you would choose determine the character of your community by choosing which set of leaders you decided to have. We're going to have like up to 3 leaders. And so you could choose a doctor as a leader, and an engineer as a leader, and a sheriff as a leader. And so some of them will be tied to people's like fifth skills. Some of them would be tied to their, their personality, basically, which is what sheriff, warlord, trader, and stuff turned out to be. But at that point, we had not actually. We were kind of designing the game exclusively as a forever community style game, where you're just trying to survive as long as you can. And we hadn't really figured out what the end game was going to be. We had some ideas of like map-based end games, where it's like the end game for Cascade Hills is fixing the dam and providing power to everyone, and the end game for Meager Valley was, I don't know, something else, whatever. We were thinking of something like that for the endings. But at some point, we sort of realized we're making a big, ambitious game, and we're never going to ship this version of it. It's just too huge. And so we started scaling things back. And so rather than doing that huge variety of leaders, we scaled it back to just the personality-driven leaders, just those 4. So we went from like a dozen down to 4, and then said those 4 leaders, they're going to determine what the end game scenario is. So instead of having different end games per map or just a bunch of different strategic end games you could choose, which were we didn't have a really specifically well-defined answer, I don't think, to that. We decided the end game was going to be each leader fulfills their personal aspirations. And so in theory, that sounds good. I think that there's the actual implementation of it, I think we can all quibble with a little bit. But as a scoping decision to make the game small enough to ship it, I think it was a good decision. So I do kind of like, there's a part of me that like wants to sort of imagine what that original version of the game might have been like if it was about strategically choosing like a triumvirate of leaders that would characterize your community as being different from other communities. But I'm going to pause this because the next time we play, I like to start with a siege, and so if the next time we play we start with a siege, that'll be kind of fun. Anyway, so that's kind of the shape of it. So yeah, so people have theorized that there might have been like a doctor leader or a scientist leader or a whatever leader. They're right. There were thoughts of that, but definitely we could not have shipped the game if because what we ended up doing, giving each leader their own end game scenario, those missions, as simple as they sometimes seem, were a lot of work to put together with the tools that we had and the resources that we had. Making those 4 legacy arcs was pretty hard. If we had to make 12 of them, we wouldn't have shipped the game. So we made the right call. But yeah, no, I am intrigued by the possibilities of adding more leaders and having them mean something different. One thing that Joe and I have talked about a lot is really wanting to, and Eric and I have talked about this a lot too. We really like the idea of making who your leader is right now be more meaningful to the strategy of the game. Right now, all it determines is what you can build in your base. It just adds 1 or 2 more facilities or facility, upgrades, and it determines what the end game is, and that's kind of all it does. And we feel like it would be interesting if your choice of leader mattered more. So, that's something that's in the back of our minds. I don't know when or if that would end up getting on the priority list to actually implement something along those lines. It's not the next thing we're doing. The next thing we're doing is infestations. But yeah. So that. Thank you for bringing that up, Cogs, because that is an interesting subject, and it's interesting for me to see, for me to recall where the game started and where it ended up. Airy Twitch says, I'm looking forward to your Heartland run. I don't know if I am. I think I'm just going to get killed and embarrassed. But we'll see how it goes. Cog says map-based endgames sound cool. Yeah, I think so too. Like, originally, the Builder Boon, where, you're providing free power and water to everybody, originally that was, in my head, that was the Cascade Hills boon. That was like, so if you have beaten the game on Cascade Hills, you can now provide from Cascade Hills power and water to everybody else. So if somebody on Migra Valley says, oh, because Cascade Hills is over there doing their thing, I can get free power and water from Cascade Hills. And the idea was we were going to like lay it out so that like all of your saved games weren't represented just as like slots on a menu. They were going to be represented on a map. Like, here's your Cascade Hills save game. Here's your Meager Valley save game. Here's your Drucker County save game. And if you've beaten the sort of like map requirement in each of them, they provide a benefit to their neighbors. That was one way to approach it, which I actually still kind of like that idea of setting something up like that. But you always come up with, like, every game has a version of it like that. No matter how fancy and complicated and full featured a game is, if you ask the developers of that game, they can tell you about the much bigger, fancier, more fully featured game that they originally envisioned that they didn't make. And so State of Decay 2 has got its version like that too. But yeah, I would love it if we someday made a game that had a feature like that in it. I think that could be really interesting. But I don't think State of Decay 2 is really on that path now. The problem is when you implement things in a certain way, you do end up kind of committed to a certain degree. It is hard to root out things that are, particularly things that are people's accomplishments. It's hard to root them out and replace them with new systems. So I wouldn't expect State of Decay 2 to shift in that direction unless we made some pretty dramatic changes. Oh, yeah, so Toxic Green says, it would be nice if the talking in-game would be translated in German, too, not just the text. And it says, because it's hard to drive and read at the same time. I agree with you. I totally understand where you're coming from there. It would have been nice if we had been able to localize our VO and not just our text. And I'm sorry about that. Like, it really, I think that was just sort of a resource issue because the sheer number of dialogue lanes in our game, because we have all of these randomly determined characters, and every player character line has to be said by all 14 player voices. That's a lot of VO, and recording that not just in English, but also in every language we support would be a logistical nightmare. And so our game was just not operating at a scale where that was going to be feasible. And so sorry about that. I mean, we did make sure to localize the text, but yeah, that was a limit that was something that we couldn't really reach for. So sorry. I did realize that. Yeah, like I love watching movies with subtitles. I really loved, like, Dark, for instance, is a favorite TV show of mine that I watched with subtitles. I didn't want to watch the one that was like where everyone's like speaking with American accents in English. The original performances are usually my favorite ones. And so yeah, so I love being able to watch stuff like that. But I realized that a video game is really different from a movie. A movie, you can just focus on watching the action, glancing down at the subtitles, understanding what's going on. Whereas with a video game, you're so engaged. The part of your brain that reads is already engaged doing other things in a video game, and being able to read at the same time is a much bigger challenge than it is in a movie. So sorry about that. I realize that is a hassle, and I wish that there were more that we could do about it. But unfortunately, I just don't think we're in a position to. Toxic Green, I really appreciate that you like the game in spite of that extra hassle, because yeah, I recognize that's a real legitimate hassle, and Yeah. So, anyway, I'm glad you still like the game. I appreciate it. Wizard asks, is it possible to make drag and drop happen in Survivor Inventory? So yeah, so that's interesting because we basically set up the game so that it could work with both mouse and keyboard and a controller. And I think a lot of our ambitions early on were to make it really a full-featured game on both of those platforms. But what we ended up needing to do, again, mostly just because of like time and resources, was saying what we need to do is actually make it kind of lowest common denominator between mouse and keyboard and controller, which means that basically if one of them, if the approach to inventory, say, that works for controller can work on mouse and keyboard, then we do that. Similarly, if an approach to a menu that can work on controller is the ideal one for the mouse and keyboard, just go with the mouse and keyboard one, whichever one is easiest to implement, because we had to get this game out. And so in a lot of cases, like inventory, it would make a lot of sense if there was a very mouse driven drag and drop interface for if you're using a mouse and keyboard, but still also a very sort of clicky highlight and do function option with the controller. That would be ideal. In fact, one thing I've been thinking about at one point was having, like, for instance, little buttons, little sub buttons appear when you're mouse overing something to let you choose all of the functions with just a mouse, rather than having to hit keyboard keys in order to like salvage something using a mouse and keyboard. But because like hovering over something and then using a key on it is not a thing that you usually do in a mouse-based interface. And it's weird that because we have a very controller-driven menu, that's the analogy we come up with for mouse and keyboard. It's not that great. And we had ideas for how we could do the mouse and keyboard interface, but again, we didn't have the time and resources to make it happen. And so, yeah, I would love, I would love in the future to be able to put more time and effort into that kind of thing. We'll have to see how that goes. It's a big challenge. Oh yeah, Wildman. Yeah, so we're getting a lot of UX suggestions for like ways that we can make a lot of this stuff more versatile, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Like Wildman was suggesting like having sort of a faster scrolling option for the supply locker with the right thumbstick, since you're not using it for anything else at the time. Yeah, that's a good idea. That makes a lot of sense. I'm just trying to get like navigating off the left side of the menu not to be a disaster. So I'm probably not going to ask for that one before I ask for some more basic fixes in that menu. But there you go. I'm not on the team anymore, so I don't get to decide what the priorities are, but I do get to bother people now and then. Anyway, I am very tired. I should wrap this up. Thank you all for hanging out with me. There's a subscribe button. Here's links to other videos. The next time I come in and play with the Commune, I'm going to go here, so you can go and click that if you're watching later on YouTube. If you're watching right now on Twitch, I'm just going to disappear.